Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are stepping into a universe that feels like it was literally ripped straight out of a dark, gritty, trashy crust punk graphic novel. I want you to just completely immerse yourself in this for a second. Imagine you are the protagonist. You're an early adopter of this highly dangerous, totally underground technology, and you are about to navigate this chaotic world of mind control, crust punk gangs, and corporate espionage. It is an absolutely wild ride, and I'm going to break down exactly how this twisted lore unfolds.
So, the fundamental question we got to ask today is this. What actually happens when you sell your soul to a cyberlord for mind control tech? Because as an early adopter, a human player in this high-stakes game, you aren't just, buying a cool new gadget. You are becoming a franchisee in a brutal underground system. You're going through this incredibly dark licensing process that binds your very reality to forces you honestly barely comprehend.
Okay, let's dive into the timeline here to get the macro narrative. We kick things off in the early 2000s with the Monster Bin Awakening, which is basically a high school horror scenario that morphs into a literal trash empire. Then, moving into the mid-2000s, things get super geopolitical. You're forced into playing a double agent and shipped off to an assassin training facility called Camp Charlie. And finally, we leap into the future, landing on this isolated offshore oil strut run by Depth Heavy Industries, or DHI, where things just go completely sci-fi.
All right, Chapter 1, Selling Your Soul. We begin in an era that the source material perfectly describes as having this gritty, comfy horror slut murder vibe. We're talking an early 2000s high school setting full of trailer trashy, mask-wearing aesthetics. The whole catalyst for this chaos is a band called Monster Bin, also known as Murder Bin, coming to your town for a secret concert. And this is where the core tech is introduced. You become an early adopter of Monsterball tech. This is highly illegal, strictly underground, mind link and mind control technology. And how do you get it? By literally selling your soul to a cyberlord. He's known only as Anon, a shadowy figure who speaks in this deep, ominous, heavily modulated voice that just echoes inside your skull.
And the immediate fallout brilliantly illustrates the terrifying consequences of that tech. Students come back from that Monster Bin concert permanently changed. You and your peers start hearing voices, and suddenly you realize you're being puppeted by the band into committing these hidden, violent acts. You're literally handed lists of targets. You are completely forced to act. No way out.
Moving on to Chapter 2, The Trash Empire.
With the body count rapidly rising, you've got to adapt to survive, right? You desperately need a front to cover up the gruesome reality of your new puppeted existence. Now, what's really interesting here is how you actively escalate from just being a pawn to becoming a neurotrash gang leader. You start recruiting other affected kids into your gang, and to deal with all the violence, you begin hiding bodies in garbage bins. This eventually leads your whole syndicate to take over the local trash logistics and recycling companies as this massive citywide cover-up. You even start protecting your landfill territories using weird pagan rituals and literal ghost-possessed dogs. It is raw, gritty, street-level horror.
But hold on, because here is the bizarre twist that completely recontextualizes everything you thought you knew. You eventually discover a secret flaw in the system. Those mask-wearing bad members of Monster Band? Yeah, they aren't even human. They're weaponized zombies. And get this, they themselves are actually being puppeted by a multiverse Time Lord. Insane, right? It just reveals how unbelievably deep and bizarre this underground conspiracy really goes.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, The Double Agent.
So the massive scale of your trash empire ends up attracting some serious federal heat. Specifically, CIA agent Chara Nobin, who goes deep undercover to investigate your Monster Ben gang. And this creates an incredibly volatile situation. Because on one hand, you're still this loyal franchisee tied directly to the cyberlord Amon. But on the other hand, you essentially become an undercover informant for the CIA. You are caught right in the middle, playing both sides, and trying to navigate an impossible tightrope between a mind-controlling cyberlord and federal intelligence. To survive the heat and eventually make your escape, you have to execute a very careful multi-step plan. First, you feed Agent Navin just enough information to keep her at bay, playing along. Second, to get yourself out of the immediate crossfire, you are transitioned to an international assassin training facility known as Camp Charlie. Ultimately, you and your core crew pull it off. You basically get away with it, total American Psycho style, leaving that whole high school horror era behind to enter the highly lucrative and deadly world of private military contracting.
Let's jump to Chapter 4, The Bermuda Republic Strut.
Here we execute this massive time jump into a total Metal Gear stealth action corporate espionage vibe.
You're older, you're highly trained, and you are operating in a vastly more technical arena now. You work for a brand new corporate overlord, Depth Heavy Industries, or DHI. You're stationed out on an isolated oil strut, though you occasionally take trips to a special compound on an island in the Bermuda Republic. Now, DHI acts as a beater shell company. On the surface, it's just drilling and shipping. But in reality, it masks experimental aerospace research, underwater stealth tactics, and massive mercenary operations.
So the crucial point here is just how wildly chaotic and sci-fi your daily life has actually become on this offshore platform. We're talking daily operations that include smuggling black market weapons and managing a totally secret underwater bank. But it gets weirder. The company is quite literally growing mermaids deep underwater. Like what? Seriously? And inside the Strut's gross biorooms, they are actively housing and experimenting on weaponized zombies. As a former street-level gang kid, you are completely a fish out of water in this high-tech nightmare.
But hey, you definitely haven't forgotten how to play the game. You decide to spring the ultimate infiltrator's trap. You bring CIA agent Chara Nobin directly out to the Bermuda Strut. You're feeding her intel so she can finally investigate Annan. But secretly, you are using the CIA's presence and their massive resources to inflate DHI's lucrative government contracts. It's brilliant. You are playing the CIA, Annan, and DHI perfectly against each other for maximum leverage without technically taking a side.
And that sets the stage for Chapter 5, the ultimate triple cross. All of this bubbling tension finally reaches a catastrophic boiling point, completely shattering that delicate balance you built on the oil platform. Out of nowhere, a corrupt government pirate force raids the Strut. You are taken prisoner, weaponless, totally cut off from the outside world. Now, naturally, you expect your corporate bosses, who are now operating under the moniker Master Bin, to bail you out. But they refuse to pay the ransom. They literally leave you for dead.
With absolutely zero outside help, you have to execute this desperate, violent liberation plan. Step 1, you break into those biorooms and release the highly experimental hell ghosts and weaponized zombies. Step 2, you use that absolute terrifying chaos to repel the pirate raid and take back the Strut. But step 3 is the true masterstroke here. Instead of destroying Annan or trying to take down the company, you broker a massive, secret triple-crossing alliance between Mercball, the CIA, and Depth Heavy Industries.
Once the dust finally settles, the corporate facade undergoes a drastic rebirth. DHI ostensibly shuts down its whole mercenary division and officially goes peaceful. To legitimize the business and, frankly, hide all the blood on their hands, they completely pivot. They start selling nuclear fusion cars, and they launch something called Monster Cubes, which acts like a fun little game, but is actually a portable 3D database engine used to process their hidden operations.
And that brings us to the close of this incredibly gritty character arc. Some mercs leave for their freedom, while others decide to remain and run the now legitimized underwater drilling business. It's this powerful freedom to live moment. You survive the trash empire, you survive the brutal assassin camps, and somehow you survive the Bermuda Strut.
But it leaves us with one final, deeply unsettling question to wrap up this explainer. You survived the ultimate triple cross, sure. But during that chaotic raid, those captive hell ghosts from the biorooms, they were released into the world. Their souls are just out there now. So, what happens next in this crustpunk universe? That is a terrifying thread for another day. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep questioning the lore.